This is a Clouds weather alert.
Good late Thursday, early Friday, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. I know we have the logo red. There is a lot going on multiple levels here. We're going to get to the tropics. That's why we have the logo red, because of concern that a melt is going to form here pretty soon. I know that was a name used 6 years ago and was a big flood threat there out toward areas in Texas, a big flooding threat out there. Well, this time around, this could be a big flood threat too. We shall see as we look ahead here and toward the timeline, because it could kind of stow out, but there's some uncertainty, maybe really just a lot of uncertainty here. I know temperature-wise right now here east of Stark and Bradford County, we're sitting at 71 degrees in our rural area, but you see in the bottom right corner of the screen is something we generally don't cover here on our broadcast, but we have a missing child emergency there in Marion County. Very concerning details here. So it is in the best interest of the community to give you the latest. We don't generally do news topics here on our weather coverage, but this is a very urgent situation that we're getting word out of Marion County about in terms of what happened Thursday. There has been about 10 hours, and the Amber Alert came out probably about 6 hours ago, but the incident happened about 10 hours ago. But Dunnellon, Marion County, and part of our area. So let's go ahead and go full screen here with the graphics on this. Again, I know it is 2 in the morning, so if you're watching live, as of last information or details that we're getting in here, we have not had a resolution to this, but we had a very serious story here where 17-year-old Caden Spate went missing there in Marion County in Dunnellon, according to media reports. This was after a shooting, apparently, or he may have been a shooting victim happening there with a work van that he was in. And then, as you see here on the screen, I'll kind of go over this, with just reading this here. As a Florida Amber Alert has been issued there for Caden Spate, last seen in the area there of the 12,800 block of Southwest Highway 484 in Dunnellon, Florida. That's in southwestern Marion County, though. As I looked it up on the map, it's just east of Dunnellon proper there. We'll go in there on our map in just a moment. But he was last seen wearing an unknown colored t-shirt there and blue jeans. And Caden may be in the company of 4 unknown males, possibly Hispanic. They may be traveling a light-colored van. If located, do not approach. Contact law enforcement immediately, 911, one of the primary options in regards to that. So we have a 17-year-old white male here with brown hair, brown eyes, 6 foot tall, 150 pounds, from Dunnellon, Florida there in Marion County, that went missing around 4 p.m. on that Thursday. He was potentially abducted there by 4 unknown males, possibly Hispanic. A very serious situation, a very concerning situation, and it doesn't go over here, but according to media reports like from WCJB in Gainesville, they're indicating that the Marion County Sheriff's Office and the information that's coming on in indicates that he may have been shot there. He may have been a victim of a shooting before a potential abduction. So again, very serious situation. I know it's not weather related directly. Granted, I know we will have some shower action here on your Friday, even some thunderstorms. There's a 70% chance. So on and off, storms could interfere with search efforts here, and there is a fog potential here overnight. Maybe not quite as concerning down there as maybe a lot to looking at some of the modeling, but it's still possible, could interfere with those search efforts. I know, citing WCJB TV20, the ABC affiliate in Gainesville, is reporting once again another reporter on the scene, and we don't work with TV20, but in the best interest here of the community to just kind of relay their reporting that apparently they were looking, groups out there, the officials were, the searchers there, looking for a heat signature with it cooling off some. They might be able to see, if he's out there injured. They might be able to find him here, hopefully they can find him alive and get him to help. It would seem that he would need here in a situation like this, again, a very urgent situation, an Amber Alert here, very high priority situation, obviously, a child abduction emergency there in parts of our area. Just for perspective, as a visual here, I'm going to pull up our coverage map real quick. That's the only reason I'm doing this. But you see, we're in Bradford. We covered 62 counties. Marion's, past a lot to the south. And then this is around Dunnellon, so the southwestern part of Marion here on the screen again. This is an area that's kind of rural out there. I know the media obviously covering this, the area generally isn't covered that much. I know Bradford, just for geographic relational purposes here, did play there at Dunnellon not that long ago with the football team, varsity football team. They traveled down there recently. So that's just for, geographic perspective. But more geographic perspective here. I'm going to go to a different source now. Again, we're going to get into the weather in a moment, but this is very urgent. We got to find Caden here. We want to obviously find him alive and get him, potentially, if he needs that help from gunshot injuries. This is a urgent situation where time is of the essence. The clock appears to be ticking here. So a very serious scenario. As we go back over to the map, you see that red dot's about the location, so it's not right in Dunnellon based on what I've seen here. So you see Dunnellon, the city itself, it happened over here in the vicinity of this red dot here. This is just west there of State Road 200. As we go ahead, I want to throw his image back up again here. Again, this missing child emergency, Marion County, there in Dunnellon area. You see, this is right there along County Road 484 as I put the mouse back on. Again, very serious. I know the radar's up. We don't have any real precip. There's maybe some fog around, as I've alluded to, in some spots, but it's not a situation here where we necessarily have, anything that's just overwhelming. I know a transmitter at the Ocala International Airport, so 10 miles of visibility, recently 75 degrees. So again, that is a METAR site. So again, very, very serious situation there in Marion County. Again, we don't generally go over news topics, but this is one where, it's a local story and we can be of help. These situations, we have an Amber Alert here with the details that we have. I mean, we'll have silver alerts, amber alerts at times, and you'll look at the details here, and, some of them can be very serious there. You have to take them all seriously, but some of them have more concerning details than others, and this is about as concerning as it gets here with an Amber Alert. So again, we have this red dot. That's about where it happened. It's been 10 hours, so in theory, if they took them, they could be, very far away. They could be in Atlanta. They could be in Miami. Using I-75 anywhere. I mean, this is not just a Florida thing at this point. It's possible they're still confined in the area there, but you see that red dot, that's about where it happened. And again, very serious stuff there in Marion County. Again, a child abduction, missing child emergency there, Dunnellon, that area there. My thoughts and prayers got everybody involved and impacted here, that are victims of this terrible situation. So, again, we're going to go ahead, though, right now and try to make some tough transitions with this. Again, I'm going to, for the most part, for some graphics I can't, but generally we're going to try to leave Caden's picture up. Again, that's one perspective of it, Marion County, Dunnellon. And we'll throw it here into the corner right now as we need to get to our weather topics. That's what you guys are tuning in for here for the most part. So we know we have, a reach here on social media, on YouTube, and, time's running out potentially. And, it's the middle of the night. Hope, if we're going to have a positive resolution to this, it'd be more likely, to find them earlier on versus later on in terms of just police type of instances based on all the different protocol, different police departments have talked about with missing children. I know it's a little unusual, 17 with an Amber Alert maybe, being this high priority, that's concerning, but because 18 would be, an adult, it wouldn't be a child situation anymore, but But based on the details, this is as concerning as it gets, and time is of the essence here to find Caden. So now we're going to switch over toward the weather, make that tough transition. As you see here, we're going to leave that up in the corner of the pictures. So if anybody's tuning in, they see that, they say they need, maybe you guys are seeing that you need to find more information on that. We'll go over more information later. But again, you do have some clouds here. Infrared satellite we have, and I put the radar up here, even some showers as we're looking out there toward the west right now, and we have a boundary, some cooler air kind of try to get in, but not really, but there could be some storms on this Friday, on this 26th here of September 2025. You can see here, we have 74 Tallahassee right now, and you see the general thunderstorm risk in play. That very light green shaded area, everybody has a risk for a thunderstorm on your Friday. Not everybody's going to see one, but they're all going to be, more organized areas here with boundaries, the line at times, at these different, at different points here in time. I know it's a scenario where it could impact some high school football. Chances started to go down a little then as we started to lose some diurnal heating. But still, we'll watch here for that. Serious, situation. I know with the bottom right corner, we have a serious situation in the tropics I'm about to get to. This is a little less serious with the squall line. That's going to be not, something that's really robust, but little pieces of something similar to that developing at times, but there's no formal severe risk. We didn't have any warnings on Thursday. We thought we might. We didn't have any. We had, believe it or not, up in New York State, a tornado debris signature apparently on Doppler, but we had a risk at first for our area. It ended up getting dropped, which we saw, the positive thing. I know some areas still need that rain here around, so again, just be mindful of that here as we're looking, as we're tracking here. I know it will enter. Fear though is those search efforts, hopefully, this comes to a positive resolution sooner rather than later with Caden Spate there being found safe. But it's a situation here though, as you're looking down there, let's go ahead and pull up some of the modeling. So we have a few different things we can do here with the computer models. So let me go to about sunrise. We're going to zoom back out for a moment here. Take off the radar, take off the wind directs, and take off some other things. There's just so much going on with this. This is showing maybe some storm action really trying to get going there around sunrise. This is 8 a.m., 9 a.m. Let's take off the temperatures here. 2. We'll progress this around 10 a.m., 11, noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. 5 o'clock, 6 p.m. You see some storms. We'll have to see. Some of these games started a little earlier, like in Jacksonville, so that could be impacting some high school football. We'll have to just see. St. Augustine, maybe at 7 p.m. there. And we'll show you the, look at things. This kind of just shows you another run of the model, and it shows some storms at 3 maybe toward north central Florida around Stork, maybe a little bit in Marion. You just kind of never know here. As I know we bounce between some of that, I'm going to go ahead. Let's see if we can let's run this out, and I'm going to pull it back up here. This is 6-hour estimated rainfall through about 7. So 1 to 7 on that Friday. This says, an inch or so in northern Bradford up toward McClenny, but this is all kind of random. Southern Duval, maybe a couple inches here as we're looking. Maybe not as much to Marion, where search efforts may be ongoing, but you just never know here. With this forecasting, this is just another vantage point, of things here as we kind of shift around with it. That kind of shows the timeline here and potential rainfall amounts as well. And it brings some stuff further down to the south. So I'll have to just wait and see as we go ahead and continue to watch things again, trying to keep you guys up to date here on this as we kind of progress things on out. You see around Pensacola there, some thunderstorm action around the community of Navarre. So that's something to kind of be mindful of. Nothing severe, nothing tornadic. I know as we look across the country, there's a margin risk of severe weather on that Friday out toward parts of Arizona here. Parts of Arizona, let's see here. I'm going to kind of put my chair back just a little bit because we are trying to look at some things here in the Weather Center and parts of New Mexico as well. A marginal severe risk there on that Friday You see some hail, some wind risk in play there. And then you see, I know for that big FSU game up in Virginia, I know we had some severe thunderstorm warning not that long ago in southern Virginia and around Charlottesville. Well, there's a thunderstorm risk there in theory. So we're just going to go ahead and continue to keep you guys up to date here on everything. We'll be watching. If we have a delay in that game, we'll be letting you guys know about it there at the 7 p.m. kickoff schedule at FSU there at number 8. You know, the Noles are, you know, in the standings. They're going to be on the road in Charlottesville at UVA. So that's, you know, important to keep in mind there for sure. Now, the tropics, I know we were alluding to that in the description. There's just so many different things to talk about. Some of these, you know, more local topics are ones here where we're talking about, of course, the missing child alert and the local storm threat in the short term. Well, now let's kind of broaden our view, though, and you see some thunderstorm acts in east of Florida. You see here an area that may be becoming a melta here soon. I don't know if that name sounds familiar. I know 6 years ago we had a melta out here in toward the tropics as well. And it was something that was developing right off the coast there of Texas before it hit. Ended up giving over 40 inches. I mean, honestly, that name could have been retired, but I know we're always watching things. We're always tracking things here for you in the Weather Center. As I'm just going to kind of tell you about all the different platforms we're on. We're watching this tropical situation here. Southwest of Puerto Rico is where we're seeing, you know, this potential in terms of some of the thunderstorm action that's trying to come into play. You know, that's where it's more well defined with the moisture. You see the center maybe further north. It's not officially tropical yet. It's not organized enough. That's why, you know, it's not officially designated there, because it doesn't have quite enough organization here, enough, you know, of the tropical characteristics. But expect to become a melta here soon and move through parts of the Bahamas. And you start to see icons like the one on here, and that indicates maybe a Cat 1 hurricane, give or take, strong tropical storm maybe, or even a Cat 2, you know, different options on the table. Maybe a landfall on Myrtle Beach or Wilmington, but we have Umberto out there as well, which is a very strong tropical storm, almost a hurricane already, and it could interact with this area down in here, and if it does, it could kind of tug it different ways, and it's going to, between the overall pattern we have, so many different meteorological players is going to really, and already has been, wreaking havoc here with the computer models. So something to be very, you know, aware of here for sure as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here in toward the Weather Center. I know just a situation where we could have more uncertainty than normal, you know, more uncertainty than normal leading up here. Leading up to that landfall, meaning it could kind of switch tracks a little bit here on us, or it could make a curve all the way back out in toward the Atlantic here, instead not be near as big of an issue for the Carolinas. But there's a lot of concern. It could be a slow mover. Could even, as you see here, these green dots here indicate maybe coming all the way down toward, you know, the south again. And it could, you know, the moisture, the remnants of a matter could increase our rain chances Thursday, and especially into next Friday. Talking about next Thursday into next Friday, a week from now. So we'll have to watch for that here, obviously, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. So, again, just continuing to give you guys the very latest here. Continuing to give you guys the very latest here on things in toward the Weather Center. Just kind of watching things here for you at this hour 2:26 in the morning. Again, we're just trying to be mindful here of what's going on, obviously, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. So, again, there's a lot to unpack on a lot of different levels here, but could end up having a system, you know, that could be a strong tropical storm melta or a Cat 1-ish hurricane coming in late Monday, early Tuesday in areas around Myrtle Beach and Wilmington. But this is subject to change. It could shift north, south. I know we're coming to late. Trying to see some of the latest models. We haven't gone through everything, but we've gone through quite a few of them. In fact, as I wanted to hear, I need to look at the Euro, because that's just coming in. you know, this is one of the advantages of coming on here at the night, in the night here, like we're doing. So let me go ahead and try to pull some things up. And the DFS, watching that, of course, and then the Euro. Well, it looks like it's kind of, and I may need to go to another source here because one source didn't have it all the way through yet here, but I'm going to go ahead and progress some things out. See how it kind of indicates things could play out here. I'm going to loop it around on my end here, just looking at the European model, latest 0-0 run, because all these different model runs, when we have so much uncertainty, they kind of help to understand the situation. I know there could be some different interactions here too that kind of make the storm not as organized as it generally would be, maybe on radar and on satellite. The Euro model has, interesting. I have a feeling, I didn't check the rainfall yet, but I have a feeling it's going to be a big threat there in terms of flooding toward the Carolina coast if that comes true, because it was really stalling it out, like Imelda 6 years ago as well toward Texas in some ways. Honestly, maybe, we've talked about it before, maybe Imelda that name should be kind of just, done away with here, because it might, have to be after this instance of it. We'll see, but Europe shows like very significant Umberto, maybe like a Cat 4 type storm, maybe approaching Cat 5 even, but it's not the one coming directly toward the U.S. here like Imelda would. Umberto would be kind of helping to steer Imelda, which would be like maybe a Cat 1, but it has a lot of moisture just kind of training in on like Charleston, give or take. In this current run I'm looking at behind the scenes, there's a lot of concern with all that precip coming on in. I don't love seeing some of these numbers here. I suspected, the numbers would be really extreme, and yeah, Europe's showing 20 inches of rain towards some of those coastal areas, give or take, right there around Charleston and Myrtle Beach, just up to Wilmington, here in there, some spots, maybe even exceeding that in theory, because, this is not what I'm looking at behind the scenes, the high-res, model that far out, so yeah, there'd be pockets of more, and already, like Charleston's a low country, that would be a problem. So we really got to be careful. We may want to go ahead, in those flood vulnerable areas there, South Carolina, North Carolina, go ahead and get those sandbags available, if you can, whether, I'm talking to even just, officials there. I mean, as we're looking as much as residents, because it's going into a weekend by Monday, be running out of time possibly to prepare. So really, a situation, we're just going to err on the side of caution, but there's more potential here of what you would call like boom or bust, in that we can have something really bad, or we might have a system recurve and not really have much of an impact over land or current risk, and the like would be there for sure, and coastal, impacts even along our coast or locally, but, wouldn't have that direct landfall like what these models are indicating, because it could jog out instead of, you see, and I know I don't have my mouse on the screen here, but you see this T here. Well, I just put a red dot there. Instead of going in like it's sewing, it may end up just kind of curving off to that point there instead, or maybe even further out into here and just kind of going away, verging back off here, based on what Umberto does, and Umberto steering of Imelda here. There's just so much going on here meteorologically. See, Umberto is almost a hurricane, and it could become a very powerful one. You see the HWARP model showing 4, that's the blue one there. Well, even the Euro, Euro doesn't normally get as high as what I just saw. It's showing like a 4 or 5, but it wouldn't be the one based on the current modeling to directly hit the U.S. here. Unless something really weird happens, it would be the more dominant system steering, Imelda, but Imelda, could still be strong enough. I know we had a situation there in the Gulf about 5 years ago. Marco ended up kind of just dissipating when we had a more dominant system. So I did have some tornado threats locally in the Tallahassee areas there, and in the, some of those viewing areas here of our region. So that's something, that we were watching back then. It's a different, we're not on the northeast quadrant of this here as of now. Eventually in a week from now, maybe the remnants get down into Georgia or something, and then, you do have that. And talking about southeast, which when I say southeast, that could mean Savannah, but I'm really talking about Brunswick, right across our part of southeast Georgia. So we're going to be watching all that here for you. And toward the Weather Center. Again, this is Umberto. Almost a hurricane. May already be right now. Let me see if they've sent anything out. It didn't have no update because there's no alerts for it. I know we have Gabrielle out there. It's post-tropical. But I'm still leaving it highlighted on our list that I'll show you. Because there are some alerts in play there toward some of those areas further on out because of the winds, being up there, strong tropical storm force around the Azores. So, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking them here in toward the Weather Center, there's just so much going on. Switching radar, or not radars, switching satellites here, infrared satellite views. I was just trying to see here how, maybe a little bit higher resolution of this act, and a lot of moisture here be dragging in. We'll have to see exactly how that sets on up. You see the color cloud tops indicating that, but you see some dry air to the north. We'll have to just see how this orients itself, because there's always a chance, based on how things feed in or don't, then you could get dry air to kind of, maybe limit the rain at points and or, weaken the system and or create a tornado threat there. That's another possibility as well. When it's a little more substantial, we'll just have to wait and see. But very complex situation. There's not a lot of high, level type, details we can get into in that specific details where I'm going with that, because this is a little too early, even though it could hit Monday into Tuesday. It's just hadn't really formed yet. And with another system there, we have some other patterns, with an upper level low, and it's very hard for these models to kind of, latch onto this here. Very confusing, in terms of what the models here are kind of seeing. So we just have to be kind of mindful here that we have to just be alert. We have to be alert here, folks. There's just a lot going on. High pressure further out. Umberto, we had Gabrielle. There's just so much going on. So let's go ahead and kind of go over some more details here again with the tropics in terms of Helene here in just a second. And that, anniversary here. We're now, on that date. It's later tonight, really. But first off, we just got a breaking weather alert up in Virginia. So a thunderstorm warning just popping up around the Petersburg, Virginia area here. Until about 3:15 a.m. a severe thunderstorm warning now in effect here. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts possible around Petersburg, Virginia. So that's the storyline there. This is south of Richmond and, west of Williamsburg, Virginia, northwest of Virginia Beach, southeast by a good ways of Charlottesville, where the Knowles will be playing, later tonight. It's about 65 miles as a crow flies there. And I know, that crow does fly, there could be FSC fans that stop there, maybe in that area in the state tonight, before getting up to Charlottesville. So some Seminole fans, could be getting impacted. I'm sure there's some UVA fans there in toward that Polygon there in Virginia right now. So, just, so much going on. Before we talk about Helene, the anniversary, I want to go over some, of our coverage from last year leading up to Helene. We do need to go back to that breaking news alert there in our covered area. It's something that doesn't seem to be weather related here, but it's very important. 2:35 in the morning, and on this Friday, on this 26th day of September 2025, if you're watching live, Amber Alert still in effect there for 17-year-old Caden Spate there. This is very serious in that the media reports indicate here that he may have been shot there, may have been involved in a shooting. As we were looking back at about 4 p.m. on that Thursday. This is a very scary situation. Still missing here 10.5 hours after that. The Amber Alert came out about 7:30. There's phones across Florida. If you have them set with that, type of alert, then they were probably, unless there was an issue going off, so we have tornado warnings to go off and the like. The emergency alert is very important. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have, helped find, maybe, we don't know, but hadn't seemed to help Biden. Caden here, as of yet. Again, this is in our area. Very serious details. Apparently, getting shot there in a work truck. And then, as it says on the screen here, a Florida Amber Alert has been issued for Caden Spade, last seen in the area of the 12,800 block of Southwest Highway 484 in Dunnellon, Florida. Again, that's in our area, really just east of Dunnellon, city proper, as you're going east from there. And I'll see the map on this. I mean, Bellevue's off toward the east here. Again, I know this isn't weather related, but it's very important, to show you guys here with this situation in play. You see that red dot here. You see that red dot, and you see areas like Bellevue here, and you see Dunnellon, a little closer to Dunnellon, it's the Dunnellon address, but not right in town based on the reporting with that address. Looking that up on some of my different sources there, it's around that where that red dot is. This is west of State Road 200 there. Again, this is, Southwest Highway 484 there in Dunnellon. We're looking in that area where it apparently happened. And what I'm talking about with this, again, it's a very serious breaking story, is where we do have, apparently a situation where, in this spot he was last seen wearing an unknown colored t-shirt and blue jeans. A 17-year-old white male with brown hair and brown eyes, 6 foot tall, 150 pounds, from Dunnellon there, happening around Dunnellon. He was apparently maybe kidnapped there by 4 unknown males, possibly Hispanic. They may be traveling in a light-colored van. Again, this information is from FDLE. This is and out of the Marion County Sheriff's Office as well. This is some very important information, obviously, and if located, do not approach. You are, urged to call 911 really, immediately. I know it says law enforcement, but really 911 would probably be in an urgent situation like that. Your best way of trying to, get a positive resolution, to this situation. So, again, very serious stuff there. As we're tracking there. Again, this happened there in the area of the 12,800 block there of Southwest Highway 484 in Dunnellon, Florida. Apparently, Caden, he may be in the company of 4 unknown males, possibly Hispanic there, and they may be traveling in a light colored van there. So that's kind of the storyline. Again, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement sent information out. The Marion County Sheriff's Office, all the different media sources. Again, if located, this light-colored van, do not approach it. Contact law enforcement immediately. Again, a Florida Amber Alert remains in effect for 17-year-old Caden Spade, last seen in the area of the 12,800 block there of Southwest Highway 44. Again, this is, at the 2:30 in the morning when we're doing this live on this Friday, this 26th. So it's still in effect there, still missing based on this indication here and this, information. He was last wearing an unknown colored t-shirt and blue jeans, and Caden may be in the company of 4 unknown males, possibly Hispanic. So again, this is very serious stuff, apparently, based on media reports leading up, to a potential kidnapping. He was a victim of a shooting, and then, again, citing media reports, he may have sent a text message there, to his mother, and it's a scenario where that was, a point where he was alerted that he needed help, but then going to that scene, he wasn't, located now, maybe being kidnapped there, so not good at all there in Marion County. A very, very serious situation. Thoughts and prayers got to all the, innocent folks being impacted by this. So, really serious stuff. Hopefully he's, located safely, and, hopefully he'll be able to, be alive and recover. Just my thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family and all those innocent folks, impacted by this. Now, another terrible situation we have to talk about here, the anniversary of Hurricane Helene. Major Hurricane Helene, a Category 4 storm, was one of the country's most impactful ever. That landfall there was 1 year ago today. That Thursday night and a Friday was a, very treacherous time locally. Well, this time around, for parts of areas, it's much different, in terms of what's going on, but it's a very serious time. Marion County, obviously, that Amber Alert in effect, that Charlie Duck's an emergency, but this, was a bigger scope of impact, obviously, in terms of geography with Helene. We had a lot of fatalities from it, all over the place, especially in western North Carolina with all that flooding. But 140 mile an hour maximum sustained winds at minimum pressure, 939 millibars here. With this, a very powerful, low. It hitting that Perry area so hard, hitting other areas here in our viewing circle so hard. It's that storm of record for, a good, number of our counties, about a third of our 62 counties or so. That storm of record is, based on my assessment of things, going back to 1950 with the records, in terms of the names being, actually listed for the storms here, for the names being actually listed here for those storms. So, we're talking about 23 of our counties here. Not all of them were hit by the Cat 4 catastrophic winds, but, they all, had the big impacts. Even some areas not on this did as well, but this is where really that storm, I know Idalia was so bad the year before, but then this kind of one-upped it here. It's that storm that was the worst since they've been naming the Atlantic Basin Hurricane Center, been naming, systems that's going back to 1950. This is the worst one for 23 of our 62 counties, based on my assessment. That 1 year anniversary is today, but it was even worse in terms of the human toll in western North Carolina. Just absolutely awful up there, obviously. It's such a terrible, terrible situation. It wasn't as strong as a Cat 4 in terms of the winds there, but it was that flooding. Already had a predecessor rainfall event there, so such a big deal for those folks up there in the ward parts of western North Carolina. Could have got a rain even from a melta that's about to develop. We'll have to wait and see. The forecast is very, iffy, but it could become a big issue. We'll have to watch up there. We'll have that rainfall forecast here in a moment. But again, looking back here at our storm system, you see what the radar looked like at 11:10 p.m. on that Thursday. We were on the air covering it then, leading up to it. We gave you guys the advance notice here, over a week before it hit, before it made landfall. We were warning of the danger here in the Weather Center that Helene could pose. And right now we're going to go ahead and take a look back at that, first lead up here. That something may be wrong here and may end up being problematic with this, system. We're talking about, what ended up being a problematic system in Helene. There were some signs there about a week out. We gotta watch here next week, folks. So we may have to turn the logo red later this week, because you see that 20%. You think, well, okay, only a 1 in 5 chance of developing in the next week. But honestly, there's some indications in the modeling that we really have to pay attention very carefully. And again, may have to turn that logo red here as we look ahead in toward the timeline, because of the elevated concern there, that enhanced concern. It's very uncertain right now, but an impactful system could develop from the Central American gyre there and track toward the southeast United States later next week. Could even end up being Florida. So that was from there early Wednesday morning, that September 18th there, and really, about almost 9 days out from the official landfall. But we were warning that something could happen, but then, as things escalated, we turned that logo red, things became more and more clear. There'd be concern. I know we had that logo red there that late Thursday, but then as we look beyond that, here's another look back at some more of that coverage of that terrible, terrible situation here. Back, just over with the coverage leading up, this clip a little over a year ago from now, as we were warning of this danger that Helene was posing. This looks to be a very big deal here. Could even be worse than Idalia, Helene, believe it or not. Expected to be slightly stronger. I know Idalia ultimately 115 at landfall. just such a serious situation there, obviously. And let's take another look back now at even more of the coverage of that just historic event. 15 to 20 feet, that is just horrific here, folks. Absolutely horrific. And that does include areas here like Horseshoe Beach. You're expecting there 15 to 20 feet of storm surge in Horseshoe Beach. Steinhatchee, I mean, it's just heartbreaking what could happen tomorrow. I mean, we had, values that were pretty high last year. I'll see if I can get that comparison graphic up here in a moment on that. But, I mean, this could be still, just believe it or not, a lot worse. We could have, quite a few more buildings just wiped away. Such an awful situation, obviously, there with that storm surge being forecast, and we've seen a lot of that coming to fruition. Not as much toward, the West Tallahassee itself, in terms of the wind got lucky, and so did Wakulla there in terms of surge. I know some of those western Florida counties still got it very bad around Tampa, but it was even worse. It was catastrophic for some of our coastal areas like Horseshoe Beach there and some of the other beaches around. It was so bad in Idalia and Helene was even worse there, just absolutely awful. Even Cedar Key, it wasn't a storm of record, but in Levy, based on, we had Hurricane Easy and 50 doing loops around with all the flooding rain, but it was still one of the worst ones they've ever seen here with Helene down there in Levy County. And, again, we were just telling folks about how serious this was going to be here. The storm system Helene, so many of our counties, so many communities, taking so much time to recover, and some areas will never be the same. Gotta take all precautions here. It's now midnight. That means we're gonna have a hurricane hit later today. That could be something that people are talking about for the rest of their life, and you have to really take this so seriously. We're gonna dive into all the details here in this update. Such an awful scenario with Helene. Again, my thoughts and prayers go to all the victims, and their families. It's, a year later, and it still leaves a mark. There's still very visible signs of damage here in our covered areas. As we're looking here at things, as we track things here, our different zones, whether it's, parts of the eastern Florida Big Bend, portion of our covered area, or in north south central Georgia, that portion, that part, within the covered area is different portions, of the area. So again, Helene so impactful, in the Carolinas. It was even something, that was even worse. I mean, in terms of, just that wall of water because of all the rain out ahead, and then coming on in later on as well. Now, as we go ahead and show you, though, we have our current situation out there. Gabrielle, then Umberto, and Gabrielle's one where it's post-tropical, but it's still issuing alerts. The hurricane centers, we're keeping that up on here highlighted. Umberto is one that could play a role in where Imelda goes. Umberto could be a very powerful hurricane. Imelda be a little weaker than Umberto, maybe a lot weaker, but still very impactful potentially. Maybe the one that actually impacts the U.S. directly, it would seem, based on the latest information. You got to remain alert and really need to have that hurricane kept up to date in toward parts of North Carolina, South Carolina, even in North Georgia there. I'd be, really maybe having it up to date there, Savannah area. But even in some of our southeast Georgia counties, not the worst idea right at the coast and into Florida, because there'll be some coastal impacts here with the wind. It would seem, if it took a track like what we're expecting, regardless here, of how close or how far it is from the coast, assuming it does develop and, takes a track within reason of what we're expecting. Here's another look at this, the 2 a.m. update from the Hurricane Center in Miami. You see Gabrielle, you see Umberto, and Invest 94L is what this red area is called, and we're expecting, this to develop 80% chance within 48 hours, 90% here as we go a little bit beyond that, technically within 7 days, but it'll be quite a bit less than that probably for that area there, as we're looking at things with the geography, unless it just keeps spinning somehow, and it takes a while to develop, but I don't think it would, take that long to develop in that red circle to be out of that before probably, 5 days, maybe, even maybe just 3 or 4 days there. So it could hit the Carolinas as a strong tropical storm or hurricane around Tuesday, September 30th, Monday night. maybe a Tuesday, somewhere around there, it could spin out, and the Euro was showing something a little bit longer there in terms of the overall process. As I was just looking at that here behind the scenes, obviously. Again, we're just looking at everything here for you in the Weather Center, obviously. We're just trying to keep you guys up to date. I know so many different things we're looking at. I know we're even seeing like different things come across here with something out toward earthquake off of the coast of Oregon. Tsunami not expected there after a 5.9. Not related to what you're seeing on the screen, but just kind of showing you guys that there. In terms of talking about it here, giving you that visual, just with my voice. But again, let me go ahead and check that Euro. Again, I'm pulling that up now behind the scenes here. I mean, Euro has it kind of hanging out there off the coast. They're right at it for a while, looping around before maybe it comes into South Carolina as a Cat 1-ish hurricane. We always got to prepare for, forecasting is coming out here soon for a tropical storm, no matter or a central tropical cyclone. You gotta always, if it says 1 hidden, you always gotta prepare for a level higher. If it says 2, prepare for a 3, Cat 3. So that's kind of some emergency management advice here. As we go ahead and look here, it is still that time of year for at least a couple more weeks where we really have to be paying attention. We had so many storms hit around October 10th. I know the I name is really common to be a problem, but the M name around October 10th is even sometimes a little more, prevalent here lately in terms of what you would maybe not expect, because we've had Matthew, we've had, of course, Michael, we had Milton last year, so just, that's something to kind of keep in mind here as we're looking at, as we're tracking things. Now, in terms of the overall situation, let me go ahead and I'm going to pull up here real quick. I know there could be some isolated tornadoes of this, so there's just tornado safety tips, not necessarily around here, but up in North Carolina is something to be aware of out there. Could have some tornado watches, tornado warnings. So important to make sure you seek a sturdy building for tornado warnings issued. That means one's been detected using radar or with rotation, or actually maybe spotted visually, or maybe it was a debris signature that prompted it, and then on radar with correlation coefficient. But you want to get as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Protect yourself from flying debris by putting on a bicycle helmet, football helmet, or baseball helmet. So something along those lines. But we throw it back over to the graphics here now. You see the names, you see I is going to be next. It would take a good bit of action between now and October 10th to get to the M. Before then, that'd be Melissa. That was something we had, I talked about those points, but I names, we've had so many of those be a problem over the years. Not a certain time necessarily, but Irma, Ike there, Dahlia, some of those come to mind. Method in 2019 was a problem as well in Texas, quite honestly, there. And there's plenty of them I'm forgetting, but, I has always been a big problem there over the years in toward the basin because it coincided at a certain point there in the tropical cyclones, and it's just processed generally in terms of, that number of, storm number, which is, I do the math here real quick, it'd be about, I guess, it's 3 to 6, it's 7 to 8, it's about storm number 9, in the season, so. That's kind of the storyline there as we're looking at things and as we're tracking them. As I know, we go back over towards some other mode, and we were watching the storm in Virginia. That severe thunderstorm warning went away as we're looking up there. So that's some good news in toward that area. As we look back locally, again, we're watching the Doppler here. We're watching the tropics, though. We're waiting for, looks like, some new model runs to come out now. They're about to update here on us, so we'll see those here soon, hopefully, assuming they come out here in pretty short order as we're looking and as we're tracking things. I know it's just always important here for our friends in South Carolina, North Carolina, maybe even around Savannah, and then even coastal Southeast Georgia, we're really wanting to be watching as you just want to make sure your hurricane kit is up to date. I know South Carolina, North Carolina seems to be, where we're pinpointing the threat being the greatest here, but just make sure your hurricane kit is up to date. Some supplies are tax-free here in Florida. A basic disaster supplies kit includes water, non-perishable food, battery-powered or hand-cranked radio, a no weather radio, flashlight, and first aid kit. And remember, after a storm, you may not be able to get immediate medical care. I know that full list is available there, ready.gov/kit. Some storm threats require evacuation, especially of mobile homes because of high winds, so you want to secure loose objects ahead of time. If you were to be evacuating, from there or just a site built structure even, mobile homes are more vulnerable though, but in coastal areas, because of storm surge, really even somewhat more vulnerable. And, so it's happened like Corsa Beach and, with Mexico Beach further out, 2018. But in these worst case scenarios, these are capable of causing, both of these, with high wind warnings, the concern too. But then the storm surge, especially, is capable of causing total devastation. Inland flooding sometimes is a bigger concern locally. Try mitigating the threat beforehand with storm, preparation like sandbags and other items and methods. That big flood threat there, maybe Charleston or Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, even, New Bern, North Carolina, give or take. It's not a guarantee because this could just all of a sudden kind of use Umberto, get caught up in the spin, the Fujiwara effect, and kind of end up not having near as big of an impact, and then you wouldn't have that kind of, flooding there. It might not be near as impactful. There's a lot more boom bust type potential than normal with this, timeline that we're in, only a few days, out. I mean, it's Friday morning, so let's say Thursday night, Sunday night is 72 hours, so we're about 96 hours out from this here. But you want to get necessary supply of gas and gas. You got to remember that credit card machine may not work. Sometimes I remember after Michael and Mariana, a couple months later, the credit card machine was still not working at a restaurant. And, you want to just charge up your devices as power outages are possible. If we had something or even could end up becoming likely in this situation, and then be ready to move to an interior room in a tornadic situation. So, very important to keep in mind as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. Let me go ahead and I know I'm continuing to look at things here, continuing to track them in toward the Weather Center. It's about 3 in the morning if you're watching live, and that's important about the tropics, and of course the terrible, concern there with that missing child alert there and/or Marion County, which will give you another update here on in just a moment. We're just continuing to watch different things. There's so much going on this early Friday morning as we're looking at things. This is that rainfall forecast here. As we're looking towards South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia there. You can see a lot of precip potentially. And this, they may have sent out another update on this here in just the last little bit. Let me make sure it's not too far from this because we do want to give you the latest information. This is a graphic, or I had put it in a little earlier on because there's so much to get to, so many stories. It's pretty similar, I would say. Maybe, maybe just minor changes. South Carolina, for instance, stand out on my end. Maybe a little bit further up in Virginia, but it's really not. It's not worth having a change. Maybe it's slightly more in our area as well with the precip over the next 7 days compared to what you're seeing there. That's in the graphical presentation. But it's so in what I'm looking at here, close half inch, 3/4 more, of that floor. You have a little bit less of that dark green, more of that dark blue there. So a little bit more of that precip there in terms of the overall forecast. Still see on that, and that's the coastal areas getting a good bit more rain maybe in our area, but then up in the you see South Carolina, North Carolina, some of the areas there getting upwards of 7 inches of widespread manner, some localized spots. So I said in the Euro model information though, could get much more, and even widespread could be a lot more than this depending on how this sets up, because they're kind of hedging here with probabilities. There's a lot of uncertainty, but I know you can go to clutter.com/radar for interactive look at things. I do know areas like Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri drying out for the most part here as we're looking ahead. So that's good. It had some rain, the boundary pushing on through, so things as anticipated here kind of pushing on out toward the east. I know they have needed the rain. Some areas have gotten it. I know the drought concern still looms though for some of our area here and a lot of the areas in the country. I know even I was watching the Boothville, Missouri there. That's a big drought. Had some precip there as we were looking here lately, but the drought index isn't going to account for all of it here the last couple of days because it stops even though they put it out Thursday. I'm looking at behind the scenes. It only goes to like early Tuesday, so almost I'm not going to even pull it up because it's not completely up to date with some of the more recent rains. But again, we're watching things, we're tracking them with that sports weather as well. I know the Seminoles there, my Noles, Tommy Castellanos there. The Noles 3-0. They're going to go to the Virginia Cavaliers 3-1 there. Going up to Charlottesville. It's going to be, Mike Norvell and his squad with Tommy Castellanos there. Going against head coach for Virginia, Tony Elliott there. And his quarterback there. That is such a, big weapon for him in terms of, throwing that football around, and that is Chandler Morris. Chandler Morris there. So they did lose one game, but they had a big, margin of victory over Coastal Carolina, for instance. A very tough opponent, a tough place to play on a Friday night. Noles have had trouble with these type of games in the past. Gotta be really, watching here for a potential upset. It's 7 o'clock Friday on ESPN tonight now. It's not Saturday, it's Friday. And it's a weeknight type game, even though it is not a school night the next day. But it's high school football. I know, folks, some people don't particularly like, the interference between high school and college here. But lower 70s, 50% chance of rain, so even some shower actually could interfere. You saw the thunderstorm risk on the other graphic. There's a chance for a brief storm, but concern for showers more than thunderstorms would be there, it would seem. But it's right on the fringe of where, it seems like further to the south, maybe a little bit higher, and the timeline might set up where they have a little bit lesser chance. And, if there's a different timeline a little later out, maybe it'll be a little higher of rain, but we'll have to watch, we'll have to track. We'll be monitoring that there for you. Gators off this week. Jags going out to California to take on San Francisco there. As we're looking and as we're tracking things, as we're watching the overall pattern here, we're just trying to keep you guys up to date. I know as we go ahead, though, and progress, Bradford and, other high school teams around the area in action. Bradford's 4-1. They're going to travel to Keystone Heights Indians, 0-4 there. Winless Keystone, but it is a rivalry game, not that far apart, obviously. They're just barely into southwestern Clay County. Are the Indians at Keystone Heights? Upper 70s, 55% chance of rain. Mostly cloudy showers and maybe even a storm possible. Timeline might work in our, in our advantage here, and to our advantage, as we're seeing the threats of the storm to be earlier on a little bit higher, but we still can't rule something out there in the word Keystone. That game on the radio, WEAG 106.3 FM in the region. Start Keystone. It's just Bradford High broadcast, from the, that vantage point. But again, that's the storyline there. As we're looking, as we're tracking, then I think this picture was against Keystone, maybe in the playoffs, going back, I can't remember, but 2 years, but this is in Bradford, but it's going back a good ways. I mean, probably almost close to 10 years in that picture now, but as we're looking and as we're tracking things, I went underneath this, but Keystone really, really struggling. Doubt they're going to go to the playoffs this year. They, unfortunately for them, they've not been that competitive in their games, but Bradford really dominant. In certain games. Other games a little harder. East Side, they pulled away late. They did lose that game up at Mandarin and Jacksonville, though. But East Side, Gainesville, they pulled away late to Bradford. Went by a good margin. Their quarterback side covered and the squad. That great team there. Obviously trying to, be a contender for the state title. Made that title game back in 2023, but haven't won it since the 60s here. Back-to-back years. This is the last time Bradford won a state championship in high school football. Won in high school basketball not too long ago, but about 4 or 5 years ago now, maybe 2021 I want to say, but 2020 into 2021, but not here in toward the football team. Very stiff competition obviously for the football team here as we're looking and as we're tracking things there. Just always kind of mindful here, of what we're dealing with here in terms of all of that. So, again, just trying to keep you guys up to date here. And let me clarify that with the state title. I think it was 21 of the 22 actually with the state title. Some of these years go together with the high school basketball, but it was 21 and 22. I'm going to double check that. So that's what the storyline is there. They were the 1A state title, holder that year and winner that year in basketball, 21 into 22. But as we're looking here, you can kind of see we have that terrible breaking news story continuing. It's going to be that tough transition once again in Marion County, that in Allen area. We have 17-year-old Caden Spate here still missing. Very, serious situation, obviously. We need to find him. We need to find him alive and get him safely, home there. Get him safely home there to his parents, to his family. This is, something that is a very serious topic, obviously, that we've been reiterating throughout the broadcast here. Amber Alert in effect there at Allens in southwestern Marion County that's happening there. Maybe just to the east of the city center there, but again, really, concerning type of topic, going missing there after maybe being shot. And based on the Amber Alert information, may have possibly been kidnapped there. That's why we have the Amber Alert, possibly kidnapped by 4 males there, unknown males, possibly Hispanic. So, really, just do not approach the vehicle that they might be in, which would be a light-colored van. If you do spot that vehicle, you want to go ahead and contact law enforcement immediately. He's a 17-year-old white male that is missing there. Just not a good situation at all. He has brown hair, brown eyes, 6 foot tall, 150 pounds, 17 years old. Again, under that alert going off on the phones there around 7:30, 8 o'clock. As this is a very urgent situation here, a missing child emergency in Marion County. It's approaching 12 hours here since the incident happened, where he was, apparently, based on media reports, shot, and then potentially, after that, kidnapped. He's 17 years old. Caden Spate missing. We want to bring Caden home to his family safely here. It's a tough scenario, a scary one though, very scary. It's one we really want to have a positive resolution to. This is in Marion County here, very serious, as serious of an Amber Alert as you'll really ever see in toward, the country and in toward our area. I know we've had some that have been in, ones here over the years that have ended, very positively, and some was in this tragedy here. We hope this is a positive resolution, but there's, a lot of concern here tonight. Again, very, very big deal. Let's talking about fog safety right now, though. I know could have a little bit of that out there for searchers. Just got to watch out for that hazardous driving there due to low visibility. You want to slow down and give yourself extra time to reach your destination. Make sure your vehicle is as visible as possible to other vehicles by using your low beam headlights there. Again, something to be very mindful of, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. Just gotta be leaving plenty of room between you and the vehicle in front of you. Very, very important here as we're, looking at this situation again. Just gotta be very careful on the roads here for sure. Let's go ahead and take it at 7-day forecast now, though. I know 70% chance of those shower storms today, even a isolated severe one, not out of the question. Again, that could impact search efforts. 60% chance on that Saturday, 40% on Sunday. It drops some. I still have a little higher than some of the guidance. We talked about this because our eastern areas could have some of this a little bit higher over there. Our coastal areas really right at the coast, east of the intercoastal, where to be a little more concerned, and right out of the coast, really, with the rough Atlantic beach conditions, rough current risk, and the like. Got to be very mindful. This could be, with 2 different systems, really 3, could be an issue. We have 40% chance Sunday, Monday, 30% Tuesday, as we would think the pressure pattern with this would move away, whether it's Carolinas or further off to the east, we'll see. You see temperatures here, upper 80s, upper 60s in general. The lows about what you expect. The highs a little bit above average though. But by Thursday, there's a chance we could have them out as remnants kind of come back on us here again. Something to bear in mind. I know we're down to 70 here East of Stark right now, by the way, rural area. But this accounts for the beaches and everything together. You know, in our 62 counties, South Georgia, and like 69 on Waycross. So it's kind of the storyline with all of that, obviously. So, a lot going on, obviously. And I've been waiting for some of these updated model runs to come out, and we do have the latest here now. So let me go ahead and show you that. It's in our source computer here with the tropics. So let me go ahead and kind of pull that on in. Give me just a few seconds here as we do that. Again, we're following this, we're following that, developing situation as you're looking out of Marion County as well. Again, we're looking for that missing 17-year-old Caden Spade. We'll put that picture back up. If you have any information, contact the Marion County Sheriff's Office. And really, if it's something urgent, which, if it's something that's, really urgent, of course you wanted to call 911. But as you see here, you can kind of see what we're dealing with this in terms of the infrared satellite. As we're looking at, as you're tracking things, you also can call, again, for that information, missing child, you have the Marion County Sheriff's Office number. That is 352-732-9111, or 911 there. That's very important to keep in mind. Bottom right corner of the screen. 911, would be something more urgent, but a lot of, information in this, could be very urgent. So, as you see the infrared satellite, again, we're watching our system here about to become a melta, it would seem. You see these models, these plots, these are the latest runs of this, as we're looking here on this, different views, whether it's the TVCN consensus, has it as an intermediate tropical storm off the coast of Jacksonville, about 180 miles. And that would be around 2 o'clock Monday afternoon. The H-warp, you see some of the blue dots, it has it going into North Carolina by, maybe Tuesday morning there, could end up being closer to Tuesday afternoon, we'll see. But, see how a lot of these are closer together now, and that would, concern me in terms of some type of flash flooding potential. So, again, we're watching, we're tracking everything here for you. And toward the weather center, again, we're watching. You see the TVC intel close. That's 2 p.m. on Tuesday. This one here, 2 p.m. on Wednesday. But that's after it already went up here, 2 a.m. on Wednesday. So it's just looping around, dumping rain all over the place. If it does that, that's bad, obviously. It'll remind you of maybe Florence a little bit. Then Hurricane Florence, so almost we've had so many, it was, maybe it's supposed to be a little bit more powerful when it came in on them up there years ago with the wind, but it was still very impactful. It kind of gets forgotten about because they had so many storms, last half decade plus. That was probably over a half decade ago, probably before, that had to have been before 2020 at this point, but these storms are still nice. In North Carolina here, the different icons with the H-warp, that's 2 p.m. Tuesday, 2 a.m. Wednesday, 2 p.m. Wednesday. So yeah, it's very slow mover, and that's a big problem there. But yeah, Florence, it was in 2018. It was, one that left a long-lasting impact there. So I know it got replaced by Francine in 2024 because it was retired. As we're looking, that was a very odd path because a lot thought it would recurve early on. It was far north for where it ended up. It ended up going all the way across the Atlantic at a further, north, track there than what you would generally anticipate. So, let's see if there are any questions or comments from any of the viewers at home here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. I know, very long update, so much going on here. So many important topics here to discuss, obviously. here on Cloud Weather. We're watching things for our 62 counties, watching things for our friends up north. We have the logo red because of that, not necessarily because of direct local impacts here, but we're going to be, very mindful here, maybe the remnants come down in a week and provide a lot of moisture. That's what the DFS was showing for Southeast Georgia in a week. So a little more time to watch it from that, aspect and in that regard. So again, that's kind of what we're doing with there. What we're tracking, what we're monitoring in terms of all that. So before we let you guys go tonight, I didn't see any questions or comments. I want to talk one more time about this very, very urgent situation with this Amber Alert. It's been almost 12 hours here, here as we look ahead. Because if you're watching me live, it's 3:17 in the morning on this September 26, 2025. If you're watching, maybe recorded, we might have a resolution here on this by the time you're watching. But I know it's 11 hours, maybe not. Eventually here, we're going to be in the 12 hour mark, as this is a Florida Amber Alert here issued for missing 17-year-old Caden Spate. He's a male, white male there, brown hair, brown eyes, 6 foot tall, 150 pounds, missing from the Dunallen area there, maybe just east of city center, but this is around, the 12,800 block of Southwest Highway 44 in Dunallen. He was last seen wearing an unknown colored t-shirt and blue jeans. Caden may be in the company of 4 unknown males, possibly Hispanic. They may be traveling in a light-colored van. If located, do not approach. Contact law enforcement immediately. The media reports were indicating that he may have been a victim. The vehicle was apparently shot up, and he may have been a victim of a shooting before being kidnapped there. Just an awful sequence. My thoughts and prayers go out to everybody impacted here, by this, those innocent folks, whether it's him, his family, just awful, his friends, just awful, awful, awful situation. We gotta find, this young man, Caden Spate there, 17 years old, missing, Amber Alert. We want to get him safely, back to his family. We want a positive resolution here. Again, very serious stuff. Please, if you have any information, contact law enforcement, whether it's that Marion County Sheriff's Office number I gave you guys a little while ago, if it's maybe not quite as urgent, or, if it's very urgent, you need to call 911 immediately. You need to call 911 immediately in that instance there. So, again, something to be very important, something that is very important. That's something that got to be very mindful of, obviously. Again, it's 3:19 in the morning as we're looking at this situation. Again, we want a positive resolution here. Very, very serious topic, obviously. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, obviously, this missing child emergency. So, again, really serious stuff, obviously. Just not what you want to see. And just hoping for the very best here in a very serious time. Again, this is Dunallen, this is Marion County that we're talking about. I know for geographic perspective, I know we're in Stark, and from Stark to where this incident happened, as a crow would fly, is about 55 miles or so. About 55 miles, give or take. But it's within our 62 counties. It's only, you go Bradford to Alachua to Marion, and there it is. I mean, Bradford County, Stark, very familiar with Dunallen. Some folks from Stark were just down there, with that football game not too long ago. So, but we cover 62 counties, not that far away. The North Central Florida missing child emergency here right now with 17-year-old Caden Spate. Want to get him back to his family safely. Again, we don't generally diverge, and switch off of the weather topics, but this is something that's very important considering, and concerning public safety here for our local viewers. It's very important. This could be, a real big public safety situation, maybe with, those that are indicated in the Amber Alert as being, suspects or at least persons of interest in this, then, that could be something here where you have to be very, very careful here as a community. You just got to be really careful. Again, really serious situation here as we're looking Again, the 17-year-old missing there, Caden Spate, went missing there in the 12,800 block of Southwest Highway 484 in Denellen, Florida. Last seen wearing an unknown colored t-shirt and blue jeans. Caden may be in the company of 4 unknown males, possibly Hispanic. They may be traveling in a light-colored van. So that's the latest we're getting in right now. I know, according to media reports like from WCJB, he went missing after being wounded in a Marion County shooting. So again, that kind of adds to the storyline here, Sergeant, because, if he is that victim there, then time even more. I mean, already that one kind of victim, and, maybe kidnapping victim as well. Really, time is of the essence. This is the middle of the night, but check those security camera videos. I mean, even in Stark, I mean, not saying you need to go out in the night because, the animals and the like, that's in rural areas, but check those security camera videos to see if you have anything, especially in Marion and in some of the neighboring counties, whether they're in our area or not. But just everybody, you don't have to go outside, since it's the middle of the night. Obviously, you could put yourself in more danger by doing that, even right there in that area, since it is dark and that, but, maybe at first light, not by yourself, but with maybe somebody else, just somebody being aware, maybe check your property here to see, I know by the time the murder came out, it was almost dark, right about sunset, so, but check those security camera videos, even now at 3:23 in the morning, I mean, that shouldn't be something that puts you in danger here, I would not think, but, obviously, check that property there when it is safe for you to do so. If you're in that, region right around there, especially right there in Marion County, maybe, you could be talking about into Ward Levy and Citrus, maybe even in the Sumter there, because they're not that far away. Some of those areas, outside of our official covered area, Lake County even, not really that far away either, and Putnam and Alachua and Gilchrist, Dixie, as you're kind of looking, but this is in North Central Florida. Child abduction emergency, some of the more, concerning details you ever have, with one of these. So I know our logo is red because of the threat from a melta likely forming very soon, but this is a very, very urgent situation here with, the community in mind here with this situation out of Marion County, Florida. So that's the storyline there. Again, very serious, very high level of concern with all of that, obviously, with this missing 17-year-old Caden Spate. So that's the storyline there. We're going to switch to our other source here again as we really wrap things up. We've been on for a while here. Just, there's so many different things to cover. The Helene anniversary, obviously, just all the tragedy that came from that. Folks still recovering, trying to recover a year later. A lot of tragedy, trying to, really, for those that can, didn't lose their life, lose their loved ones, try to eventually, find a situation where they can triumph over tragedy, but some folks never will. We're watching this missing child emergency there, obviously, where we're hoping for the very best as we're looking at that screen there at this hour. So much concern, obviously, as we're looking at this. If you know anything, please, 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 go ahead and give the Marion County Sheriff's Office a call there, 352-732-9111. So 310 up to the 9 is 911, or just call 911 if it's something more urgent, obviously. Because, if you locate the vehicle or not approach, contact law enforcement immediately. I know you got this on your phones, so you can go back on your phone and get more information about this as well. And, just something here we're hoping for the very best with. So we're hoping for a positive resolution. My thoughts and prayers, out to him and his family. So there's your view of this Doppler presentation here. And this late hour, you do see again the model tracks. You see the temperature change. You see still on 82 in Tampa, cooler in Missouri, mid-50s up there. As we're looking at, as we're tracking things. So, again, we're very, very mindful of just everything going on here. you know, and we're going to go ahead and wrap things on up for now. Stay safe. Have a good night the best you can. You know, if you can, obviously there's so much going on. You know, so you might be up in the Carolinas preparing for Imelda, but, you know, if you can, try to, you know, enjoy that weekend. But also the breaking news around here, which is so sobering, so concerning here, that local breaking news situation. Very scary, obviously. So, you know, down in Northern Allen and Marion County. So just please, you know, hug your loved ones. It's been a tough stretch here in the country lately. So just really, you know, just be very vigilant of your surroundings and the like. Have a good night.